So, who do I have with me on stage today? Sitting on my far, far left, Winky Choi, Head of EMEA Treasury for Amazon. Winky, good evening.
Good evening, Jim.
Winky, what do you actually do?
I don't know. I have to ask my colleagues sitting down there. I think they know better than I do what we do every day. But you know what? Everybody get understand what Amazon is, because you probably have the brown boxes sitting outside your front door at this point in time or sometime during the day, because Christmas is upon us, and I'm sure every one of you is probably ordering something from Amazon these days.
Probably. So you're the treasury woman. You're the cash woman then, are you?
I have a nickname called Lean and Mean. So yes, we do run cash in a very tight shop.
Ooh, and are you more lean or are you more mean?
That depends on who you ask.
Got it. Philippe, good evening.
Good evening, Jim.
Philippe, CEO of Clearstream. In fact, I understand that you've worked there for almost 20 years, right?
Mm-hmm.
Owned by the Deutsche Börse. What's included in your role?
First of all, the Belgians are not rubbish. They're just a bit tired for the moment. So I had to change it. Thank you very much for Belgians in the room. It had to be said. No, more seriously, 20 years, or almost 20 years at Clearstream. So they promoted me chief executive some 6 years ago. So I must have done some good things in the past, and I hope that I keep on doing them. What I do for a living is that I believe that my role, without being too serious, is to work on strategy, take a few good decisions, execute them, making sure that all the guys, the 3,000 guys we have, or employees, follow that. They adhere to the project, they hang around, which is important these days. And I will come back on that on the panel, being at the helm of a financial institutions, my job is to catch up with regulations, right? So it's a big part of my job. That's what I do for a living, Jim.
Thank you. Shiva, good evening.
Good evening.
How are you?
I'm very well, thank you.
Shiva, where are you from? Shiva Destar, you could be from almost anywhere on the planet.
This sounds like the Israeli immigration right now. Where are you really from?
Yeah.
Well, I would like to say I'm a Luxembourger, but I guess you won't let me get away with that. But I am. But I was born in Austria, same hospital as Arnold Schwarzenegger in Graz. But my parents are Persian, or were Persian. So.
Fantastic.
Yeah.
You're head of the EIB Institute. What do you do?
So I would like to say that the Institute is where it gives the money away, whereas the EIB sells money. So that's maybe one way. But why are we doing that? The Institute is actually the place within the EIB group where we are really looking to bring the impact of the bank closer to people like you. And one of the roles of the Institute is actually to build better relations with Luxembourg. Maybe that's why they put a Luxembourger there. So actually, really support Luxembourg beyond what we would do with our financing and advisory.
Because it's a little bit of a bubble, the EIB, isn't it? You've got a big thing up in Kirchberg, but I was never too sure what was actually going on.
There's a lot going on, and I can tell you a bit more about it, yeah.
Okay, well, we will discover. Right, we're talking about the future of finance, and we can't talk about the future without referring to the increasing rise of digital assets. Philippe, in the context of your role, what impact is this having on your business?
Thanks, Jim, for that surprising question that we haven't prepared. So I'm going to try to say a few words. Since we haven't prepared, the panel decided that I should say a few words about, what digital finance actually is, because I think that there are some amalgams and that lead to wrong conclusions. And we had 10 days ago an example of what digital finance should not be, right? So, but I would not consider that being part of digital finance. If you actually link it to what I said before, is that in financial institutions today, most of our time, a big part of our time is to make sure that we keep up with the regulations. While the guys that were at the front page of the Financial Times last week, those Bahamas...
You're talking about FTX?
FTX, I didn't want to name them, but everyone knows about it, were not regulated. So you see the disaster when you're not regulated. So, and I hope that there are colleagues from the CSSF in the room, so they will be happy that a banker praises regulation. But joke apart, to start with, there's a big difference between dematerialize and digitalize. right? The world we live in is largely dematerialized. You don't touch money anymore. You don't touch bonds. You don't never touch equities. And this has been there for quite some time, 70s, 80s, largely money and fiat money and assets have been dematerialized, i.e. that you don't see them, they just are a record on an IT system of regulated entities, namely banks, but not only. Right? Digitalized, though, is something different, right? Totally different. And I will cut the digitalized finance world in two, right? Digitalized money and digitalized assets. There again, there are big confusions. Even if you research on the net, you will see that, you know, those who write about it cross they call it digitalized assets. What is a digitalized currency or money? And they call crypto asset. What is a currency or an asset? So which is which? I would say that you all know that we live in a world where fiat currency is the rule. A fiat currency is a currency that used to be backed by some gold or other assets. That's not the case in Bretton Woods, right? So you know, I'm not here to teach you finance, but I mean, it's important to notice that we live in a fiat currency world, i.e. that everything that we do when we exchange a good, Amazon, and when you issue in fiat currencies, right? And you issue with a currency that does not vary. A euro is a euro. A euro is not a dollar, it keeps on, but a euro is a euro is a euro. A cryptocurrency or a crypto asset could vary, i.e. the value of itself could vary. If you exchange a cryptocurrency against a crypto asset, you've got two sides of the equation that vary. It makes it very complex. Usually, in mathematics, you need two equations to solve a problem with two unknowns, right? It's important. So, without being too pedantic, but fiat currency are today, they can be digitalized, and we call that tokenization of the fiat currencies, right? But you tokenize a currency. So the end result is not a crypto asset per se, it's a cryptocurrency that is backed by a fiat currency, or that is equal to a fiat currency. That's the first one. You have in the digitalized world of currencies, of monies, you have digital native monies. But those monies are real monies. They are there to be exchanged against goods. But those guys don't vary against themselves. You know, if you have one, whatever token of a digital currency, at the end of the day, you still have one digital token, and the value is the same as the one that you had in the morning. So that's the big difference. When we talk about in finance about currencies and digitalized currencies, we talk about either fiat currencies which are digitalized that can be used, and I would come to the technology after, and then you have those currencies, and you have companies in Luxembourg. I'm going to name one, Coin House, which is a company that is actually sponsored or seeded by Expand Capital, seeded by the Luxembourg government. It deals in digitalized currencies. On the other side, assets. Assets, there again, they can be digital assets which are backed by the hard or the real assets which have been dematerialized, or you have those digital native assets which are not backed. They are sui generis, they are themselves a digital asset. All right? And you have different initiatives that deal with both. So you have Funds DLT, Tokeny in Luxembourg. Those guys deal with digital assets which are not backed. They create digital assets. Or you have D7, for example, of the Deutsche Börse Group that deals with asset-backed digitalized assets. Having said which, I haven't spoke much yet about the hybrid, the cryptocurrencies, right? So those are hybrids. And those are the guys that I believe create some confusions and issues. Because most of the cryptocurrencies and assets are not regulated. The digitalized money and the digitalized assets, which I was referring to, and the companies that are listed before, are regulated. Which means that if someone has the idea to, they have the necessary governance to make sure that what they produce is actually checked or has been governed in a satisfactory manner, right? So
that's true, but the total number of Bitcoin, for example, is limited. So therefore, it is a limited asset. Doesn't that imply a certain sense of value?
Yeah, but what is a Bitcoin in my definition? I can't even tell you. Is it something is it a value that you use for an exchange of good, or is it an asset in itself? If it's an asset in itself, you should probably know how to value that asset. But frankly, don't ask me to value that asset, because the value is not backed by anything that actually makes sense to me. So I don't know where to. So the Ethereum or the Bitcoin are for me particular type of crypto finance. And I finish off with that. So I've spoken about the assets and the monies, right? So why is that today those came up to life, right? So the fact that the power of the computers and the network that links the computer has been multiplied by a big number, allows those technology that we hear about, which are not digital assets or digital currencies. They are technologies that support the creation of those. And you've heard DLT, distributed ledger technology, which uses what we call the blockchain technology. And the combination of those two, powered by the supercomputers and extremely fast communication network, help those assets to actually be widely used. But I think that the other panelists will talk about what they make out of the digital assets. But I hope that I was not too long, but I hope that I have demystified a bit what it is that we're going to talk about in the rest of the panel.
No, thank you. Winky, I'm going to come on to you. Digital assets or digital currencies, of those two topics, which is more relevant for you and your role?
For my role, as a corporate treasurer, I think what you would hear a lot is Bitcoin or cryptocurrency. When we hear the word, two words come into our mind: volatility and risk, which corporate treasurers simply do not like. So that is definitely out of the question. However, we do see there's benefits of the digital assets as well as the blockchain technology, or the DLT that Philip just mentioned. The importance of the digital asset that we see potentially can facilitate real-time cross-border payment. Now, Amazon, first of all, there are about 195 countries in the world. I think we're in about half of those. We have presence there. So there's a lot of transactions going on, especially with exotic currencies. It is not easy, and this is an understatement, it is not easy to move money over. For those in the treasury field, you will probably feel the pain that how much cash you're being trapped in those countries in advance, getting charged extraordinary fees just so that you can get your hard currency into the local currency to conduct business. What we do believe, digital assets in some way backed by whether it's fiat or other currency that is not volatile, will help to facilitate that kind of transactions. And then we look into the blockchain technology. Now, blockchain means it's distributed ledger. Any parties that's on the transactions can access to that status of the transaction at any given point in time. And that gives visibility. And I think that's important for financial institutions. What it could mean is that you no longer have the clients to come to you and ask where we are with the payment, right? And nowadays, a lot of FIs or financial institutions do spend a lot of money on the infrastructure just so that they can collect the information. In the future, that is just a shared ledger. And then, of course, what I think the other benefits that we might not see right away is the benefit of this streamlining KYC and AML. That also would deter anti-terrorism or deter the terrorism financing. I think that will be very beneficial both for the FIs and also for corporates as well.
Shouldn't Amazon be a bank?
It is not, I don't think this is our core competency. Whether or not Amazon is a bank, if there's a need, we are very customer-centric. If we see there's a value that we can provide better than the banks out there, maybe we'll consider. But at this point, I think we are enjoying partnering with some of these wonderful global banks. I think some of you might be here. And I think it's a great partnership. I think they do what they do best, and we do what we do best, and we can provide better synergy for our customers.
Thank you. Shiva, EIB, in what way are you encountering digital assets?
So, I mean, perhaps I should say this is great that the event is today, because yesterday, and I don't know whether you know, but EIB issued a digital bond, 100 million, using, this is the second time it did that, but it is in fiat currency, so now we have all the right terminology, so it is 100 million euros. But we use blockchain technologies, and the settlement was therefore done in 1 day instead of 18 days, cutting really a lot of the time and costs that usually are involved with issuing bonds. EIB is one of the largest supranational bond issuers, so hence for us to create now, to use this technology to really, create these efficiencies is not only important for our own financing, and this is an area that we will probably touch on, but in terms of access to finance, where we hope is we create the standards, because we spent 18 months preparing for this transaction with some very reputable market players, and you can read about it. It's called Project Venus, but if you Google EIB and digital bond, you'll get the details. These standards are those that will now hopefully be able to be used by smaller companies who have perhaps not been able to issue in the bond market because precisely there is a lot of costs involved. And by bringing down the costs, the time, I hope that in the future there will be, bid bonds or whatever you call them, using these technologies. But for the EIB, this is in a way, if you think back pre-Euro, where the EIB helped create, in anticipation of a euro currency, the liquidity in the market, I think the EIB is, helping to create the digital sort of bond market. And I think there is, we have...
Sure. Am I right in thinking that you are the biggest lister of green bonds on the Lux Stock Exchange, right?
Yes, I mean, again, you told me not to sell the EIB, but can I just say that we pioneered the green bonds? So the first green bond indeed was done 15 years ago, 2007, by the EIB. And EIB, of course, EIB decided
Although,
to
have you made up your mind what is really green?
That is, of course, for our political masters to decide. We will make sure that we, obviously use the eligibilities that also are market standards under ICMA and then the EU taxonomy, but that's for other people to decide.
Okay. Philippe, I'm going to come back to you because you kindly explained, you laid it out, but you didn't refer back to what will be the impact on Clearstream, this rise of digital assets. Because, as you're a third-party settlement company, if there's no cash, we don't need settlement. Just saying.
You said it all. But that's exactly what is at stake of the financial industry today, is that you've got what Shiva was explaining in the that usually takes 18 days to issue a bond. You just did it yesterday, which means that the money that that the investors gave to EIB reached EIB immediately. Right? And that's what you said as well. If you use blockchain technology to wire money cross-border, it happens at the speed of the electron. So because blockchain and the capacity of the computers help that happening. So the debate, you hit the nail on the head asking that question. It's not a question for Clearstream. It's a question for the whole financial industry. Those technologies are disruptive, right? So, but the issue remains: who do I go to when there's an issue with my pension money? Because if you order a good, and I'm sure that Amazon does that extremely well. It never happens that good get lost, right? So, but just a theoretical example that, you know, if you order a good, I don't know, a pair of socks and it gets lost, you know, who cares? If you have your pension money and your pension money gets lost, right? It's a different story. So the issue today for the financial industry is to find a way to reinvent itself within this new this new ecosystem where you still need a level of control. You still need a level of, you still need a, well, I would call a financial institution, or at least a regulated entity that know how to deal with risks, governance, making sure that there's enough financial surface to, if not having a branch, having the necessary systems which are protected ring fence. So that's what we. So now linking what I said to Clearstream, we're not afraid of that because we accompany the change, the changes that are happening. We develop systems which are DLT blockchain based so that financial institutions can actually use it. And we try to portray ourselves as being the home of those systems that support the technology.
Fantastic, thank you for that.
Can I just
please.
maybe briefly jump in, because very often, I mean, not maybe in this panel, but very often we talk about US being ahead of us in terms of liquid, deep capital markets, and Europe lagging behind. The typical, you know, assessment of European markets are it's fragmented. Now, I think if you look right now at the digital, you know, the prospect of what digital markets can do is where the US is very worried about a digital currency because it could actually undermine the US dollar. Europe may actually have an opportunity to actually lead, and our legislation, you know, is actually quite ahead of the curve. And therefore, I mean, all I want to say is let's look at this also as an opportunity for perhaps more level playing field for Europe to actually overcome some of the legacy problems that we have had in different jurisdictions and so on, using technology to our advantage.
Sure. Actually, I'm going to, Winky, this question is not on our script at all, but you have a lot of contact, I guess, with your US head office. How do they view Europe?
How do they view Europe?
Are we a backwater, actually?
Well, I think they view Europe as smaller than the US when it comes to the economy. I think it's a lot of regulations overhead, but what they don't see is the benefits of it. I think US is quite centric. I think for those with the US colleagues, you understand that if you buy a map in the US is always in the center of all the maps. That's kind of somewhat some of the mentality, but it is not necessary. It's our job to educate them. It's our job to educate them that outside the US, we have a place named Europe, and we deal with a lot of currencies, different cultures, right? And it's just going to take time, but I think it's a very unique position that we are in here to help to change the mind, to educate our colleagues as well, because the world is continuing to be more global. And that's what we're dealing with. I think, Shriva, I agree with you. I think that would give us a more level playing field with the new technology in place.
And if I just quickly follow up on that question, almost everyone here is already a bit sick to death of the topic of ESG. Would you say that the US is further ahead in its understanding of the implications of that than Europe?
I wouldn't say one way it's more understanding than the other. I think, at least for our corporation, we focus a great deal on ESG. I think they are all important factors. In fact, I think, I can't speak for other corporations, but Amazon has done quite a bit, just because we are a pretty impactful company around the globe. I think it was early this month, we have committed $53 million in climate change innovation, particularly for female entrepreneurs. And $50 million of that go to be directly invested in the companies headed by female entrepreneurs. I think that addressed two, right, of the ESG factors. That's the environment and the social part.
You do own a lot of jumbo jets, though. Can I just say that?
What's that?
Amazon owns more jumbo jets than FedEx.
We do. It is a logistic company after all, isn't it? But something that I thought it was interesting stats, I was just thinking about this. The packaging that you're getting today compared to about 7 years ago is 38% less weight. It's actually lighter. So we continue to improve because, again, I have about 16 boxes at home right now sitting. My husband's complaining. He had no idea why there's 16 boxes sitting there. But there are a lot of boxes. So we continue to need to improve on this packaging technology, right? In addition, we have committed in 3 years, by 2025, Amazon is committed to use 100% of renewable energy for all its operations. And that's a lot. We own a great deal of data centers around the globe, and they use a lot of energies.
Sure.
So this is not light.
So I'm running out of time. I'm going to move straight on to Philippe, actually. Philippe, ESG, what does Clearstream bring to the table?
I don't think that the role of Clearstream is to be at the forefront of the ESG. We are a technical operator of the financial industry. We follow the flow. So, but of course, as a firm, we're working on being more environmental savvy or to be frugal, more and more frugal. That's as a firm. So we committed to that. But it's easier than, as you said, for a firm like you that have to ship boxes around the planet. My point on ESG, we hear. So I'm a member of the ESMA committee, so the regulators, and one topic that we are now discussing on the ESMA investment management committee is to hunt the greenwashing. So the next wave of ESMA regulation will, in addition to having try to corral the regulations on E, S, and G, especially on the E side, ESMA will come up with, I have no well, it's not me deciding what ESMA is doing, but on the consultative board that I'm a member of, the discussion today is very much on trying to eliminate, trying to nail down those nonsense pretension that are out there. And my personal view is that we spend too much on E and S, not enough on G, on the ESG side. I think that governance, and again, just because I'm just using again the FTX example, but how can you move 8 trillion around? How can a company that is a market cap of 32 billion has 1 billion tangible assets? How can you let them, prevail? That's a big governance concern that I think that ESG should actually tackle.
Somebody's phone just rang, which was your cue to end that speech then. Thank you for that. Shiva, EIB, you actually advertise yourself as a green bank. Are you really green?
Well, I think there are 2 points to this question. We are on our footprint working very hard, and like I think all the organizations here on the panel, but also in Luxembourg and all over the world, we're trying to reduce our footprint, and there's a whole, many initiatives. The other side of the EIB is, of course, as a climate bank, we are really there to support and accelerate the green transition, the digital and the green transition. And I think here...
But can I point out, we might have electricity cuts this winter. Has that changed your agenda?
Well, what it has actually done is, so we have energy security, and we have, of course, we need to accelerate the move towards energy independence. And indeed, what the EIB had to do is to ensure that as a bank of the European Union, as the European Union needs to create today independence. That means that we need to ensure that we have ports that can actually bring in liquefied gas into it. We have to obviously make certain support certain investments that perhaps in a world where we could have only focused on the renewable side, we would have not done so. So this is a very challenging time also for the EU, for all of us, to find its place. I mean, I think we all want to make sure that we have energy, and I think here I would emphasize the energy you don't use is the best source of energy. Therefore, energy efficiency is also where we are really putting a lot of emphasis in terms of our support for new technologies, using digital to create smart use of energy, and again, trying to bring also a bit the edge that Europe has potentially over the US in terms of leadership is energy efficiency.
And feel free to anyone to chip in on this, but hasn't the current Ukrainian conflict and our dependence on Russian gas actually realized we need very unpopular coal and nuclear solutions for many years to come?
No, I think what it has actually given us is, first of all, a redoubling and a much more accelerated pace of investing in the renewable, but also a reality check that on the renewables you need to ensure that there's a good mix, and therefore, I mean, and I'm not going to talk now about where the mix is, but of course it has brought a lot of issues on the table. The role of nuclear, how do you bring in hydrogen, how do you create dual systems that perhaps from gas can move into green hydrogen, what do you do with capture of CO2? So there are, I think the debate should be really on those issues, and not on the, going back to what we know has killed the planet.
Good stuff, guys. We're totally out of time. What I'm going to just do, I'm going to ask you to give us one final takeaway. We've got 200 fantastic people in our audience. Future of finance. What is one takeaway that you would like to leave with our audience? Philippe.
I'll start first. Okay. I have my list. I prepared my list. I have 7 points.
You've got
First
one minute.
First, more regulations. As I said, if the CSSF is in the room, or if you are friends with them, tell them that I said that, right? So I think, and the regulations is in and around investor protection. So, which I think is good for all of us, future pensionees. More digital native assets. So we'll see a surge. What you're doing will become, I guess, if we do the same panel in 3 years from now, your news would be a very cold news because there will be lots of them, and which I think is great. For the financial industry and the investment industry for Luxembourg, more passive manage or passively managed funds, or instruments, greener product, greener institution, regulatory hunting, as I said. Watch out, because the asset managers will have to really show that they are really green if they pretend to be green. A big wave that we are all in the financial industry, I am personally surprised of, is the democratization of private money, which means that the private equity funds are now chasing lower investors, which I think is a great thing for the smaller, lower. What I mean by smaller, chunky investors, and I think that the Luxembourg is benefiting from it. I think that if I'm not mistaken, we have reached 1 trillion of assets, or we are close to 1 trillion of assets. I think that Luxembourg had missed, for me, the hedge fund wave, which probably was much more a Dublin-based wave. I think that we are catching up, and we're very well positioned on the private equity side. So well done to those who are in that industry. Financial product, I believe now finally, I've been, as you said, 20 years in Luxembourg in the industry. I've probably have done 30 ALFI conference in Luxembourg. There were so many conferences about a theme which we call in the industry, are funds bought or sold? Financial instruments, are they sold or bought? The end result is the same. There's a financial instrument being acquired by a private or an individual or an investor, but there's a big difference in the way you sell it. Whether you have to make an effort to sell it or whether they just get bought. I think that the Y generation, with what we said, the help of digital native assets and the digital chain down to our phone, will push for an industry that is more bought than sold, which I think is great for the industry. And the last one, which will be supported by my first 6 points, I think that data and data management will be a big enabler. And for example, since you haven't asked me the question as to why we have bought Knipe, for example, that's one of the reasons, because we believe that we have a big role to play. And you see, that's not a financial institution role.
Was it a good acquisition?
It's an extremely good acquisition. So.
Tremendous.
Wow.
Winky, you've only got 30 seconds because Philippe just stole most of your time.
Two
What's
words.
your takeaway?
It is data integrity, transparency, and that's pretty much it. And then speed.
Speed. Thank you. Shiva.
Now you understand why we're disintermediating, right? Because of Clearstream taking away our time. No, sorry. So what I would say is let's really innovate finance to actually become fit for purpose, because the financial system has actually not helped us. We are in the mess that we are between the COVID, the pandemics, the climate crisis, and social crisis. So I think really I would like to invite certainly all of you in the audience to take advantage of the fact that the largest multilateral development bank is in Luxembourg, headquartered, EIB. The fact that the EIB Institute is actually here to build the bridge to Luxembourg, making sure that the EIB is therefore relevant for the Luxembourg market, and that we actually build on the innovation ecosystem here to bring that new thinking into the EIB. Luxembourg is a perfect test bed for us for a lot of these innovative ideas. So that's what I would like to leave here.
Ladies and gentlemen, a round of applause, please, for our panel. Thank you. Thank you very much. Thank you. Thank you.